All right, guys. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Jordan. I'll be moderating, and I'm going to throw this to Callie real quick, but just a couple notes about kind of how we're going to run the event today. First thing is, if you have questions as she's presenting, throw those in the chat, and we'll kind of jump in when there's some natural breaks and asks, and we'll get all of your questions answered today. So if you got questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat. That we'll answer those as we go. If there's something that just like me or my colleague Hannah can answer, we may just answer you right there in the chat and keep on rolling. Or if you want to wait and ask at the end yourself, there'll be a little bit of time at the end. Two questions that always do come up is just about as soon as we finish, we'll get the recording uploaded and we'll send it out an email to everyone that participated. So you'll get an email with the link to the YouTube recording, and we'll send you the slides that Callie's created for us as well. So you'll have all the information coming to your email this afternoon. And I think that should have us ready to go. So Callie, I'm going to throw it to you and let you have it.
Okay, that sounds great. Can you still hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. All right, we'll get started. So my name is Callie Daugherty. I am the Technology Integration Specialist for Wirt County High School, which is located in Elizabeth, West Virginia. I've been the TIS here for 3 years, and I also teach computer science classes. I am also the student council sponsor for our high school. And just this year, I started as our PBIS lead for the high school. So today, Jordan reached out and invited me to kind of talk to you all about how we started with PBIS this year. So at our school, we have 290 students and 28 teachers and about 10 other staff members, but we are just in year one of PBIS. So it's completely new to us this year. The middle school and the primary center in our district have been implementing PBIS successfully for a couple of years now, but we were really excited to get on board here at the high school this year. So we really wanted to look for a program that we were able to track these positive behaviors that we were looking for in PBIS and give us some good quality data to go off of as we implement more strategies in the next couple of years. So the first couple of things we talked about as a staff group whenever we started thinking about PBIS were the 4 main reasons we needed to switch what we were doing. So in the past 3 years, after COVID and just kind of the mess that was, we are in a very rural county. At the beginning of COVID, about 30% of our students didn't have internet access, even though they had one-to-one devices. So as a whole, our entire school system really felt disconnected. So that was kind of a huge challenge for us as we came back into like a quote unquote normal year. We had a lot of behavior issues last year, ranging from just, kind of disrespect issues in the classroom level, all the way up to major discipline issues. And we didn't have a system in place to kind of compare the good with the bad and encourage the good. So that was really what we were looking for. So the first thing that we talked about as a staff group was, how do we address the need for consistent expectations and consequences across our school? So thinking back to last year, we didn't even have a detention system in place. So when small infractions happened, there was no consequence for the student that was consistent. The rules between each classroom differed a lot. The rules that certain administrators enforced versus other administrators differed a lot. So there was just no consistency. And when you think about that from the perspective of a high school student, that causes a lot of confusion. And that was what we found was leading to a lot of our discipline issues. Just general confusion about what are the expectations here at school. So when we first started talking about PBIS and tracking positive and negative behaviors, we wanted to lay out our expectations and our consequences for students and make those really clear. The second thing we talked about was, how do we recognize positive behaviors that translate to the real world? So at our earlier, like I mentioned, our middle school and our primary center had started PBIS, and we're implementing like a paper-based ticket system for a couple of years that, oh, you were doing good, or you lined up in line so well, you get a ticket. Or, oh, that was very kind of you to say a nice thing to your classmate, you get a ticket. And we wanted to take a little bit of a different approach to that because of the age group that we have here. So we have 9th through 12th grade students, and we focus a lot at our school on real world expectations and what their life is going to look like after high school. For a majority of our students, that is some sort of post-secondary opportunity. So whether they're going to take the ASVAB and go into the military, or they are going to go to a traditional 2 or 4 year school, or they're going to go to a trade school. So we have anywhere, depending on the year, 70 to 80% of our students that are enrolling in some type of post-secondary training. So we wanted to think about what positive behaviors relate to things that they need to do in those real life scenarios, and how can we kind of give them a reward for showing things like that. So in a couple of slides, I'm going to show you our rubric that we developed based on, we wanted to recognize positive behaviors that are recognized in the real world, something beyond just lining up in line or, doing what they're expected. The third thing that we thought about was, how do we increase buy-in from teachers, students, and parents? So like I mentioned previously, our teachers here are great at their content area, but sometimes we don't have consistent expectations across all classrooms. So we needed to think about how to make things consistent and then increase teacher, student, and parent buy-in. We wanted them to not just think, oh, this is a silly ticketing system, this is a silly point system, it doesn't really matter. Like, how does it translate to the real world? And then, sorry, there's an intercom going off. The fourth thing that we talked about was we wanted to improve our overall school culture. So we, like I said, had a really big disconnect after COVID, and we weren't doing anything like fun here at the school. We were so focused on getting the kids' skill gap caught up that our students were telling us it's not fun to come to school anymore. And that's why our attendance rate is going down, because we come here and for 2 years, we really kind of hammered them on, you were missing so many skills because you weren't here in person for a year. Like, we need to get this caught up. And before we started PBIS and live school, our reward system was completely tied to a program that was all online, all individual, and based on building those academic skills. So prior to live school, the students' rewards were all based on, did you meet the goal on that academic program? Did you earn your 4 trophies? Then if you earned those 4 trophies, then you got the reward. But we had nothing related to our behavior that determined if they got a reward or not. So we wanted to basically make school fun again for students, because we were missing a lot of that at our school. So the other thing our staff talked about is we needed to increase student involvement in the reward planning, the planning of how we were going to implement the behavior rubric, the way that we were going to run our live school store. All of this was important to increase student buy-in for 2 reasons. We are a very small school and we have very few staff members. And so the workload, especially before we got live school, was so heavy on our staff members every time we did a reward that we were, breaking our backs trying to make this fun for our students. And we were planning all of these things, and the kids could do 30 minutes of work in the whole semester and get the reward. Like, it was very unbalanced, basically. So we wanted to increase student involvement and allow them to kind of take leadership. So we revamped our entire student council in that process this year. Previously, student council had only done our homecoming event. They didn't have anything to do with the reward system. They didn't get a say necessarily in how positive or negative behaviors were affected the school system. So we did an election, and we had 5 representatives from each grade elected to student council. And then we charged those representatives with 3 things. So the first was they had to create a behavior rubric, and we largely based our behavior rubric that we chose on what their suggestion was. The second thing was they had to suggest and plan the rewards. We gave them guidance, like from an adult level, but they're responsible for suggesting them, coming up with them, planning them, and that has been key to getting buy-in from our entire student body. And then our third thing was running our live school store. So we knew that there is not a staff member available to do this, our live school store, which I'll talk about a little bit more every week or every 2 weeks. So we needed students to be involved in that. And we also found, as kind of a byproduct of that, students were a lot more comfortable asking their peers, like for asking their peers to purchase a ticket or asking their peers how they could earn points, than coming up to a teacher and asking. So those were the 3 things we kind of charged that leadership group with. We also kind of asked them, what are your suggestions for bigger rewards? Maybe they couldn't necessarily plan a field trip and organize the buses and do all the paperwork, but they could give us suggestions and kind of help on that stance. And then the last thing we did to get more than those 20 individuals involved was we planned, and we have been planning, some sort of event or competition for our developmental guidance classes every month. So our developmental guidance classes, the students start with the same teacher in 9th grade. They see that teacher every day for 25 minutes throughout their entire high school career. So if I start with Mrs. Smith my 9th grade year, I will have Mrs. Smith for developmental guidance for 25 minutes a day, all the way until I'm a senior, or all the way through my senior year. So we wanted to improve our school culture by making those developmental guidance groups really strong and giving them something fun to do during that time so they could work on those teamwork skills, those leadership skills, those communication skills. So we completely charged our student council with planning those monthly kind of activities. So for example, so far we have done a pumpkin drop design contest where they had to design a container and the pumpkins were dropped off the roof of our building. They've done community service projects where they've had, like this month, we're doing a stocking stuffer drive and a canned food drive. So each DG or developmental guidance class had to coordinate who was bringing in what. And we did a door decorating contest in November for being thankful for Thanksgiving. So those are just some examples of what we've done, and knowing from the feedback we've gotten from the students, it's been really beneficial for them to have something fun to look forward to with that class that before they didn't really do anything in, they didn't really like going to, but to give them something fun to look forward to.
Hey, Callie, before you move on, I got 2 questions on student involvement because for one, I love the idea of the student council making the behavior rubric.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, creating that real world buy-in. I think that's a fantastic way to do that. My question on that was when they were, I guess, campaigning, I guess is the word for student council.
Mm-hmm.
Did they know they would have those responsibilities beforehand or after?
Before.
Oh,
So
cool.
yeah, we like I said, the teacher who had done student council before retired last year. So it just kind of lined up that it was a good time for us to revamp the whole process. So we had students, they had to fill out an application to be on student council or be one of those 5 representatives for their class. And they had to kind of indicate what their ideas were for the school and that sort of thing. And in that application, we told them, these 3 things are going to be a part of your expectations for this year. And then before they actually campaigned or talked to their classes and put up their posters and all of that, we sat down with everybody that applied and explained these are going to be your duties for this year. If this isn't something you're comfortable with, we can find other things for you to do, but we really need, leadership in this school, and student council is where that's going to come from.
I love that because that's real leadership opportunities. A lot of times you see student councils, it's almost like a ceremonial thing,
Mm-hmm.
but like that's real leadership things. Those are real skills they're learning. So that's awesome. My follow-up question had to do with attendance. Has attendance improved?
Yeah, so we were just looking at our second 9 weeks data. Compared to last year, our attendance has improved based on our first semester data we're just kind of wrapping up. So last year, overall, we were hovering around an 85% attendance rate. Right now, we're hovering around, on average, an 89% attendance rate. In a perfect world, we would love that to be 95% or above. And we've just started really tying in attendance to our live school points that just started at the end of the first 9 weeks. So we've only had 9 weeks to see how that particular piece is played in, but we have noticed students' attendance increasing because of some of the events that we've been doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So here is our rubric as it stands today. So like I said, we really wanted to focus on how does this tie in to the real world. So we divided, these were suggestions from student council. We had after they developed kind of a draft rubric, we had our PBIS team actually sit down and kind of refine it a little bit. But I would say 85% of this comes straight from what they were saying. So we just kind of categorized it for them, but basically it came from what they were saying. So we divided it into 3 main areas, and we've really hit on the fact that these 3 things are what you need in the workplace. Regardless of what job you have, regardless of what you want to do in the future, you need these 3 things. So citizenship was our first category. So in that category, they can earn points for acts of service around the school, whether that be holding a door open for somebody, volunteering to run an errand for a teacher, whatever that might be. Helping others, which is pretty self-explanatory, whether that be in the classroom, in a club, before or after school, we allow them to reward points whenever. Outstanding kindness, outstanding participation, and then positive conflict resolution. So the positive conflict resolution is probably my favorite one from this because kids don't know they do it. And then we give them a point, and we love the comment feature on Live School because I can watch 2 students having a disagreement or having a conflict in my class, and they might be working on a project and they don't agree or whatever the situation might be. And if I don't have to step in and separate them or kind of delegate that for them, then I give them a point for that. And then in the comment section, I'll say, great job resolving this conflict in class today. Because of this, you accomplished XYZ or whatever it might have been. So that's my favorite one. And a lot of our other teachers really like using that. Our second category we have there was leadership. So accepting criticism. This was a huge thing for us. Our teachers love to give feedback. We bought several programs that allow us to give very detailed feedback on student assignments. And students had a hard time accepting that criticism. And as you all know, that's a life skill, right? You can't react negatively to criticism. Criticism is a good thing. And that's a hard thing for high schoolers to understand. So that's a huge one for us. Being a leader in class, whether that be on a class project or, helping out other students, exhibiting teamwork, working well with others. So all of those things, we love to track and use those comments to really point out exactly what they did in that instance. And then our final category that we have set up is self-management. So that can look like asking for help when needed. We love this one because we try to enforce with our students that if you have missing assignments or your grades aren't where you want them to be, that it is your responsibility to go to that teacher and make the change. It's not the teacher's responsibility once you get to high school to hold your hand and say, you have these 5 missing assignments, what can we do about it? It should be on the student to do that because that's a real life skill they need. We give points for just being on task without being asked in class is what I like to say. I shouldn't have to tell you to come in and do the same routine that we do every day. So if I can walk into my class and maybe I'm a minute or 2 late because I've had to deal with the situation and my students are already on task, they get a point for that. Being on time is an interesting one. We have had lots of issues with tardies in our school, students showing up for the last 20 minutes of a day and going and attending athletic practices. So we don't necessarily award that one to all of our kids every day that they're on time, but our students that really need to work on that skill, we love to use that for. Effective use of class time really kind of ties into being on task. Notifying a teacher of an absence. So we hound them here about if you are going to be absent the next day, you need to let us know if you know ahead of time, if it's not an emergency situation, because in a job or a workplace, you can't just not show up and then not have consequences for that. So we have a program here. If any of you are involved with career and technical education, you might know it's called Simulated Workplace in West Virginia. And basically we have 3 different simulated workplace programs running. And in those, students get points for calling off for the day. Or if they don't call off for the day, then they, get points deducted. So we wanted to extend that school-wide and really have the expectation that students say, hey, I'm not going to be here on Thursday because XYZ reason. Is there any work I can do ahead of time, or what do I need to make up? And then the last 2, just overcoming challenges. We like to award that one when our students have worked really hard and have done something that they didn't think they could do. And then telling the truth is one that we've used when there's been a discipline issue and students have been able to just, tell the truth and not make us work harder than we need to figure out what was happening. So those are our basic rubric that we have set up. There's also an additional category that I have at the very bottom that's bonus points. So we have a 1-point classroom bonus that teachers can use if it doesn't fit right into the category. And then we also have, I give 1 bonus point to the grade with the highest attendance each week. So that's how we've kind of tied attendance into that. And then a bonus point for GPA as well at the end of the 9 weeks. If their GPA is at a certain level, they get a bonus point. But really, we've tried to keep the rubric as simple as possible just to make it where our teachers are very comfortable with using it. So.
Yeah, before you go on, a quick question, because I was a dean in a high school too, and something I saw was the conflict resolution piece coming out of the last couple of years. That became a real struggle. Has this helped?
Yes, kids love whenever teachers reward that point. They really tap into that one for some reason and give them a comment, because they'll come back to class the next day and be like, hey, I got a point because I resolved a conflict or something like that. So I think it has helped. And I don't even think they're doing it consciously. I think unconsciously they're recognizing that we're recognizing them being able to figure out their problems on their own, because it's not our job to parent them, is what we try to tell them. We are basically your next step before your workplace, and your boss is not going to be your parent. So.
Yeah, I love that. It also kind of has the added benefit of sort of changing the vibe too, because it changes to a positive. But I love all this because it kind of speaks to self-discipline, responsibility, all stuff that all high schoolers need. So that's great.
Yes. Yeah. And then the last thing I wanted to mention about our rubric before I show you what our rewards look like is just, as you can see here, we only track positive points with Live School. So we've been using it for about 10 weeks now, and we haven't turned on the negative feature where you can track negative behaviors. So we have a separate detention referral system that we use to kind of track those negative behaviors now, that we implemented right at the end of last year. That's been working. And our feedback from our teachers is we really want Live School to be the positive place that parents and students can go to see, this is what my child is doing well. So, okay. A couple of minutes just on our reward system. So we have really found that giving small rewards and giving the students to choose what the rewards are in the form of purchasing passes has been very helpful for us. And then also making them have a bigger point goal to get a bigger reward at the end. So our store is open bi-weekly. It's ran by student council members, and they only know to come and get a teacher if there's a problem. And we have not had a single problem this year, which is amazing. So our student council members come in, they get an iPad, they pick it up, they get the tickets, and students can come up to them during lunch and purchase these different passes. So leave 5 minutes early for GAP. That's a program that we have on Fridays. The kids go and get pizza They don't like to stand in line for lunch. So they can use that pass, purchase it, and go early to get pizza. Free entry to a sporting event. We've used that to give them tickets to all of our athletic events. They really like that one. Skipping DG pass, that's that developmental guidance class. They can use that on Thursdays to get an hour-long lunch instead of a half-hour lunch. And then the missing assignment pass with approval is our most popular one. Surprise, surprise. So all of our teachers strangely agreed to this. So kids can use, for 15 points, they can buy a missing assignment pass as long as their teacher says they can use it on an assignment and take a 0 off of their grade report. And then the last one is a detention pass with approval. So that's our most expensive one. So if a kid gets detention, they can actually buy a pass to get themselves out of detention. So you'll notice that our point values are pretty low for this. And that's because we've set the expectation that they need to earn a total of 25 points at least for the second 9 weeks to get into our big reward. So we aren't necessarily like a high point school. We're not using it in that way. So I think our average student right now probably has around 35 to 40 points total for the semester. So it's not like they can buy 30 missing assignment passes. So.
Yeah. So all of your awards, they've had to take initiative to get the points. So you couldn't get a ton.
Yes.
I do have a question on points because you mentioned your end of the year event, and we talked about it a little bit offline. Do they have to spend the points to get in that, or is that just like a threshold to get in?
It is just a threshold. So we have said if you earn 25 points, you get into our reward. So we're planning to do one each 9 weeks. So for this is our first big one, and we have it in 2 days. So our first big reward is a 4-hour time block where students can choose between 2 movies to watch. We have an esports tournament set up where they can go play Super Mario Karts or Smash Brothers or something. They have a makerspace set up in our library where they can do painting, art projects. They can cut stuff out with Cricuts and make shirts or cups or whatever. And they will have an open gym time. So that's for 4 hours. And our local coffee shop is also going to come, and there will be a coffee bar set up for all of our students to get free coffee during that time, because that is like the status symbol of Wirt County. They want free coffee. So as long as they have earned 25 points by the cutoff date, which is the end of the day tomorrow, they get into that 4-hour reward time. And from there, they can pick whatever they want to do.
That's awesome. That sounds like so much fun.
Yes. Yeah. So it's a lot different than we've ever done rewards before, but so far, I guess we'll see how it goes Thursday, but we think the kids really like it. And they like that they just have to meet the threshold of 25 points, and they can choose how they can still spend all 25 of them if they want and still get to go to the reward. So I was telling Jordan before we got online with everyone that right now about 80 to 85% of our students have qualified for the reward, which is amazing. That's about where we want to be. So.
Yeah, that means 85% of your kids have went above and beyond and done all those things we were talking about earlier, where they're resolving conflicts and they're practicing self-discipline and being responsible. That's awesome stuff. Awesome.
Yes. Yeah. So basically from all of this, we kind of have 4 key takeaways that we've learned in just this very short amount of time that we've tried to implement PBIS and live school. And we still have a ton to learn, but we have gotten so much great feedback from our teachers, our parents, and our kids. So first, student involvement and planning increases student participation and behavior management. I really talked about how our student council has been the center of this. And then we've also tried to expand it. So every single kid is some way tied in to to the events that we're doing, to the DG activities where they're really working on building kind of citizenship and improving our school culture. So we want every student tied into this some way, and so that they have an understanding of why they're doing this. And that has been a huge, huge thing for us this year as we've implemented live school. The second thing is simple leads to success. So our teachers asked for, I want something that is super simple to use because the teachers are so busy, and we asked them to do so much during their 45-minute class period that they needed something they could literally tap and give a kid a point and be done if that's all they had time for. And that's what Live School gave us. Now, as students have given us feedback about that comment feature, more and more teachers have started using it because kids love that when their teacher takes the time, even at the high school level, when the teacher takes the time to really say, you're doing an excellent job and this is why you got your point. The leveled rewards, so it has also been a huge thing for us, where we've given the students the option to choose ticketed rewards at different prices to buy those passes, and then also having a threshold kind of reward, like if you get 25, you get into the big reward, whatever after that. That has really increased participation and buy-in from our students. And then the last thing is just those clear, consistent expectations are key to making the system work. So we also set a point goal for our teachers. So we asked our teachers to reward at a minimum 40 points per week, every single week. And our admins, I would send that little report that you can get from Live School, the teacher fidelity report. I would send that to our admins every week, and then they would take a look at it and address, teachers that may not be using it as much as they should, or teachers that were rewarding 400 and 500 points a week. So we had kind of both ends of the spectrum, and really helping people kind of hone in on, okay, like a 40 to 100 point range for our school per week is really kind of a good, consistent expectation. And then on the other side of that, what are you rewarding the points for? What are the behaviors that you're pointing out in your classroom? We aren't necessarily asking them to go above and beyond and do all these, major things. If a student takes your absence report down to the office, give them a point for an active service. So kind of making those consistent expectations across the board for students, teachers, and admins has been really our key to making this whole process work. So I think that was pretty much all I had on that. Does anyone have any other questions?
Yeah. So right before, if you've got questions, feel free to go ahead and hop in now. And if you're not comfortable with that, you can drop them in the chat and I'll ask them. I'll start off with the first one, Callie. It's only been the second 9 weeks really. Can you share kind of any data points from the first 9 weeks to the second?
Yes. Yeah. So I was telling Jordan before this started, my plan was to finish pulling our second 9 weeks data, because it's really wrapping up this week, and put a nice little pretty chart together. But I had a sick 1-year-old this morning, so that didn't quite happen. But our discipline data has really improved. So I think in September we had 59 small infraction detention referrals, is what I like to call them. They're not big enough for students to get ISS, but they're things like not bringing your computer charged to the classroom, so being unprepared. Maybe things like using foul language, or things like being tardy repetitively. So smaller things that aren't necessarily like not fighting or vaping, or big things that our admins deal with, just small things that students get referred to for detention. So in September, we had 59 referrals for that sort of thing. In the first part of October, I want to say right around October 10th is when we started using Live School, and our referrals dropped to, I believe, 38 in October. November was a short month for us. We were only here for 11 days because of the holidays and things. And we had, I think, 28 referrals in November. And then December, we were still wrapping up, but I think we're up to like 32. So just looking at the September data and our first 9 weeks data from August and September, of course, August was a short month for us as well. We've seen a significant decrease in those kind of classroom infractions. And we really contribute a lot of that to Live School.
So the other thing you mentioned was tardies. Have you put a dent in the tardies yet? As somebody, like I said, somebody was in high school, that's a big issue in high schools.
Yes. Yeah, it is. We are starting to. We're getting there. I think a big part of it is the whole going back to clear and consistent expectations and clear and consistent consequences across the whole school. So students know I can be 5 minutes late to Miss A's class, but I have to be on time or else I'm going to get a detention referral to Miss P's class. So they know kind of where they can get away with it. So we're still trying to get everybody on the same page as far as that goes. And really, because the data for that, when we only have 3 teachers that are giving detention for kids being tardy, it's kind of hard to really pick through and see where is it decreasing at. But I've definitely seen students more motivated to get to class on time, I think, or just overall kind of general feedback. I've got students are definitely more motivated.
Yeah, and some of that, the clear and consistent across the board stuff, you almost have to have a proof of concept with some of your staff sometimes, which that's what looks like what you've built here and what you're going to have this last week of school. Had a question from Anna in the chat. She asked, so like before rollout, before I guess you had your student council helping with behavior and all that stuff, how long did it take to make this plan? You mentioned kind of 4 pillars you guys decided on early. How long did it take to come up with that?
Right. So we, in a traditional school year, we would have elected student council at the end of last year, but because of kind of the teacher retiring and it was a mess and just coming back from COVID and all of these things kind of happened, we didn't elect our student council until August. And then we knew we were starting with PBIS readiness at the beginning of September. And I believe that's when we had our first staff meeting and decided, so kind of in those 2 weeks right there at the end of August, beginning of September, the staff members on the PBIS team really sat down. I think we took maybe 2 hours and sat down and said, okay, here's our expectations for our student council. We can't take this on ourselves because we're a small school. We're already spread extremely thin, and we need our students to start picking up things because it's going to help us and it's going to increase their buy-in. So the whole process from the beginning of selecting student council, making them understand the expectations for this year, our PBIS team looking at their draft behavior rubric, finalizing that took almost the whole first 9 weeks, just because we had nothing before. We had no positive behavior rubric. We had only had negative behavior rubrics. So that was a process. But what we found so once we implemented it, we took 1 week to test live school. So we did that. We set up the rubric, and I communicated with your all's tech team. They were amazing. And I said, I want 1 week where I test live school. I'm having every teacher, they can do whatever they want on there. I'm not telling students we're using it, and I'm erasing all the points at the end of the week. So that was extremely helpful because we got a lot of feedback from teachers like, well, this doesn't really make sense on the rubric. What does this mean? Can you explain it a little bit more? We figured out the comment feature was really helpful. We looked at how can you look at the data from a teacher's perspective. And then we erased everything at the end of the week. And then the following week, we started fresh. So that whole process of planning and everything, trial and error, took about 9 weeks.
So there was a comment you made earlier about it was some feedback you got from students based on like last year. And this is something I've heard talking to a lot of folks, particularly, older kids, that, the focus on, closing gaps and like you missed all this and it's just not as fun as it used to be. Yeah. Has that changed?
Absolutely. 100%. It was funny. So at the program we were using before was a completely academic based program. And we did it for 2 years, and it was completely focused on filling in skill gaps. So the students took a benchmark test. They got lessons that were at that grade level that they were at the benchmark, and they had to basically move up or master 4 skills to get the reward. And our students hated that. They hated the program. They hated how we had structured the rewards. So I took the data from that system. I took the actual academic data that was supposed to show growth. I put that in a report, and I sent a survey to every student. And I said, tell me your thoughts. Be 100% honest. It was anonymous. I said, tell me what you think. And so we put all of that together in a big report, and we took it to our administrators, and we took it to our superintendent and said, this is why this is not working. Can we please do something different? And yeah, they said, yeah, the data is not there. It doesn't justify us using this program. And now that we're not focusing 100% on, really hounding them on all these missing skills, because we're doing that in 8 class periods a day. They're already doing all this academic learning with teachers that are skilled in that content area, not their DG teacher, which is where we were doing that previous academic program, who it might be a science teacher and you're doing English lessons and that person can't even help you. So you're just stuck. And now that we're focusing on behavior and we have clear expectations for students and they know they have to earn those 25 points to get into the reward, and the students are planning the reward, it's completely on them. It's not us saying this is what you have to do. And that has been a huge culture shift at our school. And just in the past 9 weeks that we've really implemented it, our students are happier to be here. They're excited to do all of these activities. They're talking about the points. I'm shocked at like how much our high schoolers have bought into the point system. And it's just overall everybody. It's not, one certain group of really high achieving kids that are excited to be getting points. It's kids coming up and saying, I have 19 points. How can I, earn a couple more? Like, what can I do today? So that's been a huge shift.
The kind of an awesome takeaway there. If you're somebody who's in the meeting now, or you're watching this later, because a lot of folks watch it later. Mm-hmm. If you've got high schoolers, a lot of times I hear about PBIS in high school is the older kids won't be motivated by these things. Well, if you're thinking about it in terms of like expensive things that you have a hard time affording because you don't have the budget, or you're thinking of like small tangible things, maybe not, but by letting them set the rubric and help plan the rewards, you guarantee that what you're doing is something that does motivate them. And they want that leadership. They want to be involved in the process. They want to love their school. And I think that's awesome what you guys are doing.
Yeah. And that, just like you mentioned, we don't have a huge budget. I mean, all the rewards I've mentioned are free or very inexpensive. Yeah. So I think I can spend like $3 per student with some of the money that we have for a reward. So that was where our coffee bar comes in. But all the other things we're doing, the movies the kids suggested, I let them vote and pick movies as long as they were in the rating. That's free. The esports thing, we have all that equipment. It's free. The makerspace, we have all that equipment. It's free. The passes that they like absolutely love, these passes, those are all free to us and they go crazy for them. So,
well, Callie, we thank you very much. This has been awesome. Everybody that's on the call, we'll be sending you slides and the recording here shortly. I do want to share one thing before you go, Callie, because I don't know if you can read the chat or not, but we did have 2 shout outs for you that I wanted to share. Okay. There's Alicia and JC both said they're very proud of you and you are an awesome asset to Wirt County Schools. And I'd have to agree with that. You've done a great job. Thank you.
Thanks, Alicia and JC.
So we're going to go ahead and end the recording. Thank everybody for joining us and have a great winter break. Y'all have a good one. Thank you, Callie.
Thank you.